Ladies and gentlemen, kids and pets, grandpas and grandmas, boyfriends and girlfriends, presidents of countries, I'm sure, welcome to the second of the year Soggy Sports Mock Draft 2.0 Extravaganza event. Okay, this is the second mock draft of the year that I'm going to do. It is already slightly different, obvious from the first one. Things have changed. Players have had different opinions on things. And keep in mind throughout this whole thing, this is kind of what I would do if I was a GM of a team, not necessarily the rankings I have for these players, more like fit-wise and things like that. I think future fit and just how these players would play with these certain teams, I feel like. Not so much I think one player is better than the other if it gets picked before one. So keep that in mind throughout this entire thing. This is not a power rankings video. This is a mock draft video and of what I would personally do if I was a GM of all these teams on draft day. And I'll be using the order that is just kind of most likely to happen, which is worst to best team. And we're going to be doing all of that. And without further ado, without running on too much, just get right into this video. And with the first overall pick, it is fairly obvious who it's going to be, and that is the Detroit Pistons, aka the Bad News Bears, okay? They are absolutely horrible. There's not much this team does not need, but there's certain things they need really, really bad, and with them, I would just have them going as, in my opinion, the best player available, who, in my opinion, is Alex Sarr from the Perth Wildcats in the NBL in Australia. Now, Alex Sarr is a 7'1" big, but he's not your normal 7'1" guy. He is an extreme athlete who can guard pretty much every single position from the perimeter in the paint. He can do everything. He can shot block, he can get steals, he can do everything, but what makes him extremely special is the fact that offensively he can also score from all three levels, while, like I said, being an elite athlete, so he can also put rim pressure on the ball. He has a solid handle as well, and he literally can do basically everything you ask him for, and something that makes him a little bit more unique. Now, yes, he's not as tall or lengthy as guys like Chet or Wembanyama, but he makes up for that in agility, being more coordinated than them, and also he's a lot stronger than them and more filled out, which could help with injury issues down the line and things like that. So I think overall Alex Sarr is an extremely unique prospect and legitimately has superstar potential written all over him. Like, his two-way potential is absolutely through the roof, and I think pairing him up with a guy like Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey and a few of the other high-quality, high-ceiling young talent that this Pistons team does have on it, I do think that he would be a great fit for them, and like I said, he is the best player available. I know they have Jalen Duren already on the roster, but you just cannot pass up on a guy like Alex Sarr, in my opinion. You can move him to power forward if you still want to start Duren. I just think, in my opinion, it would be a mistake to pass up on a guy like Alex Sarr. And then the second overall pick, we have the San Antonio Victor Wembanyama selecting Isaiah Collier. Now, Isaiah Collier, although I don't think is the second best player in this class, I do still think he's one of the best and probably is going to be an all-star one day. But still, Isaiah Collier just fits what this team needs. They desperately need a legit point guard. They tried Jeremy Sohan at it. It did not work. It was very, very bad, and that's a big reason why their record is what it is right now. And although I do think they have a lot of talent, like I like Branham, I like Keldon Johnson, I like Vasil, obviously I like Wembanyama. I wasn't a huge fan of Sochan, but he does good things. Like, although he's not probably ever going to be a star or anything, he's a great defensive player and can rebound and play hard. I just think they need another guy that can bring the ball up the floor consistently, pass the ball good consistently, and be able to get them a bucket, and that is exactly what Isaiah Collier can do. And like I said earlier, I do think he has all-star level potential because his offensive upside is very high, in my opinion. He can score at all three positions. He's a very strong guard, so he can get to the rim when he needs to. He's a very good finisher at the rim, and he's also a smart player. He can play defense. He kind of has two-way potential, and I just think overall Isaiah Collier is going to be a very, very good player, and he would fit with this the Spurs team very, very well. And third overall, we have the Washington Wizards, and they select Ron Holland. Now, this is one of the rare examples of I really didn't know what to do because Ron Holland, I think, is 100% a top three, probably a top two player in this class. But Washington really doesn't need a guy like him, but it's also Washington, and I'm not picking Holland because they have Kuzma, okay? That was my rationing, and I just think you have to pick Ron Holland if he falls to you at third overall. He is an amazing athlete. Obviously, that's what comes off to the page, and he has tons of two-way potential. His three-point shot definitely needs development, and that's my biggest knock on him by far. Like, his jump shot needs development, but he's also shown flashes of that jump shot legitimately working at a high level as well. So although it's not as consistent as it needs to be, he is definitely showing the flashes that the potential and the groundwork is already laid for him to build on top of that. And then his athleticism and things like that are going to help him get to the goal, help him on fast breaks, help him on the defensive end. And I just think overall he's going to be a very solid player. And his ceiling is also through the roof. Now, I'm not as sure that he's going to hit it like I am for Sarr, but he legitimately has a superstar ceiling as well. Now, whether he hits that or not is a different question, but his ceiling is absolutely through the roof. And Washington just needs excitement. With some of the picks they made, like Bilal Coulibaly, I think it's going to be very solid. I don't know if he'll ever be a star, but I think he's going to be very solid. Johnny Davis, they just refuse to play Johnny Davis, so no one really knows who they have in him. And then, I mean, you have Poole, but like Poole has been very disappointing this year, and he has shown he is far from being able to be the number one guard on a good team. Kyle Kuzma's good, but he doesn't raise your ceiling at a significant enough level for it to really matter. So you had a guy like Ron Holland to raise your ceiling of this team a lot, and hopefully in a few years, maybe you can build around him, and maybe you can find a way to fit Kyle Kuzma and Ron Holland in the same lineup together, help them work, and hopefully you can win a few more games. And I just think overall, Holland is far and away too good to go anywhere lower than the 3rd overall pick, and that's why I have the Washington Wizards selecting them. And now 4th overall, this is probably the most controversial, not the most controversial, but probably the first really controversial pick, and that's going to be Mateus Bazis. I'm sorry if I butchered his name. He's also from the G League. He's Ron Holland's teammate, and I have them going 4th overall to the Portland Trailblazers. And the reason I have this is because really their only weakness is their power forward position, and I think he is the best power forward left on the draft board at this point at 4th overall. He's 6'10". Now, although he doesn't have the athleticism guys like Holland or Sarr does, he still has a very good offensive game. He can fade away. He can shoot the three. He has an okay handle. He can block shots. He has fairly active hands on the defensive end as well. And he has very good two-way potential. And I could easily see him developing into like a Larry Markkinen type player one day. And overall, I just think he has a very high ceiling. And I think Portland would love to have him because if you look what they have Anfernee Simons, who's not going to get taken out of that starting point guard spot. They have Shadion Sharp, who I think is their starting small forward to go with forward. They have Chris Murray to back him up. They have DeAndre Ayton, who's probably their starting center for the long haul. And really the only guy in a position that matters that they don't have a long-term answer for is the power forward position. Now, I know they have Jeremy Grant, who's debatably their best player, but Jeremy Grant is the one guy not on the timeline. I think he's like 31, 32 years old. He's pretty old, and I don't think he's on their timeline at all, and he'll probably be out of there in the next 1 or 2 years, and Mateus can kind of step in, fit the timeline a lot better, and really solidify that starting lineup and put them all on the same timeline for development-wise. And I just think that's the one position they desperately need, and I think they'd be getting a very good player to go along with them. It's not like they need more freak athletes on this team, okay? They already have guys like Shadion Sharp, Scoot Henderson, Anfernee Simons. Like, they already have very good athletes on this roster, so it's not like they need another one. And I think Bazis would just fit this team very, very well. And now for the Memphis Grizzlies at the 5th overall, we have them picking Cody Williams out of Colorado. Now, Cody Williams, before this season even started, was one of my favorite players in the entire draft, and he has remained a very, very good player and very high on my draft board. Obviously, as you can see by him going 5th overall, I mean, he's just very good at finishing at the rim. He plays a lot like Jalen Williams for the Oklahoma City Thunder, and he just plays extremely, extremely well. Very smart. He's a very solid defensive player. He can shoot the three outside when he needs to. He's very good at getting down to the rim. He's very solid at finishing when he gets down there as well. I just think he has a very high offensive upside. Now, and also his defense is pretty good because of his build, and I just think two-way wise, he's very solid. And there is a world where he could become an all-star player, but I think there's probably just more Jalen Williams in him where he's just a very, very high-end role player. And I just think overall, he would be a great pick for the Memphis Grizzlies because the Memphis Grizzlies' problem isn't really star talent. It's not really talent in general. It's just kind of that depth. They don't have very good depth, and I think small forward is kind of their biggest issue when it comes to that, especially when it comes to the future depth of this team and young depth. I just think he would help them a lot in that situation and at that position, and I think overall they would be getting an extremely, extremely solid player at the 5th overall in Cody Williams. And now 6th overall, we have the Charlotte Hornets selecting Jacoby Walter. And now my kind of reasoning for this is, yes, I know they have LaMelo and Terry Rozier as a very good backcourt right now for them, and they've been very good, and LaMelo is very good, and so is Terry Rozier, and he's playing by far his best season of his career. The problem is Terry Rozier is very good, but the Charlotte Hornets are not, and Terry Rozier is far from fitting a timeline of a young, rebuilding team, so I think they should trade Terry Rozier, get as much as they can for him, and then put Jacoby Walter alongside LaMelo, because I think Jacoby Walter, although I don't think he's ever going to be a star or an all-star level player, I think he fits alongside LaMelo very, very well, as he's an extremely solid defensive player, but on top of that, he is an elite three-point shooter. He can shoot off the catch, he can shoot off the dribble a little bit, and he also has the upside of being able to create his own shot eventually at some point in the league. And I think even from year one, to have a guy that can shoot at a high level off the catch with such a good passer like LaMelo, I think that would just really open the floor for him. It would finally give LaMelo Ball a legitimate backcourt partner that he desperately, desperately needs, because, I mean, for years they tried James Bouknight. That was a disaster. They've tried Nick Smith Jr., and although I do like Nick Smith Jr., I think he's better off the bench for them, so I don't think he'll be their future starter backcourt partner with LaMelo, and I think someone like Jacoby Walter could be almost perfect for them due to his shooting ability and his defensive ability, and maybe even his upside eventually to be able to dribble the ball and score for himself in a few years after he's been drafted. I just think overall he would be a great pick for the Charlotte Hornets going forward and would fit with them very, very well. And now we have the Utah Jazz with the 7th overall pick. Now, the Utah Jazz are kind of weird for me because there's no telling what this team is going to look like. Lauri Markkanen's been in trade rumors, and if you trade Lauri Markkanen, then you're probably going to end up trading guys like Jordan Clarkson and all those other type guys like Kelly Olynyk and them. So then you're going to be building around Taylor Hendricks, Bryce Sensabaugh, and those type players, which I don't think is a bad thing, but I don't know what this team is going to look like. So I really kind of just went with who I think maybe could fit this current version of their team good off their bench, and that's going to be a guy like Stefan Castle. Now, Stefan Castle, I honestly don't know what to think about him. When you watch him play, he passes the eye test, and in my opinion, he does play the right way. He can score at will when he wants to. Like, he's very good at getting to the goal. He's very good at making his own shot, and I think defensively he's very solid. I just cannot stand a guy who can't shoot a three that's a guard. And Stefan Castle, I'm pretty sure, is shooting 14% from the three-point line right now, which is atrocious. So honestly, I could very much see me dropping him in future mock drafts if that three-point percentage doesn't go up. But this is more me banking on one Stefan Castle playing better towards the end of this college season, because the way he plays, it should translate better. But if he doesn't, I could very much see this not being a thing. And then also, like I said, I don't know what Utah is going to look like by the time the draft comes around. Like, they could blow it up. They could keep it together. They could only slightly trade a few people. I really don't know. So I'm just kind of going with them, but this is very subject to change going into the future. And now 8th overall, we have the Chicago Bulls selecting Kyle Filkowski. And now this is another pick, assuming that the Chicago Bulls are going to blow it up. I know they've been playing way better as of late since Zach LaVine has left the lineup, weirdly enough. But if they can't sustain this, which they probably won't be able to throughout the rest of the season, I would imagine they're going to eventually blow up the big three, trade DeMar DeRozan, trade Zach LaVine, and then also trade Nikola Vucevic. And if they trade Nikola Vucevic, then a guy like Kyle Filkowski can start right away. And Kyle Filkowski, in my opinion, is one of the best, if not the best big in the entire NBA if you don't count Alex Sarr as a big, okay? So he's probably the second best big because Alex Sarr is a big. But he's very, very solid at pretty much everything. He can rebound well. He can block shots well. He's a very good three-point shooter. He's a very good offensive upside type guy. And I just think Kyle Filkowski is a very good modern day center. Now, I think his ceiling is probably like Jonas Valanciunas, which is a very solid center. And I think that's like a top 10 center, top 12 center in the NBA, which is a great pick at 8th overall. And I just think overall he's going to fit any team he's on very, very well. And he just has good offensive upside. He has a very good floor where he's already at. And I just think he's going to be a great player for whoever picks him from basically day one. And I just think overall he fits what the Bulls would need if they blew it up. Because if you already look at it, they have guys like Kobe White, who's playing really good, Ayo Dosunmu, Patrick Williams, and they have guys like that who already fill positions even if they blow it up. And the only position they really don't have is a backup center who is really someone that can play and develop. And I think Kyle Filkowski would be able to be that guy. And if they blow it up, he would be their starting center. And I just think he would fit this team in a position they probably would need if they did go the route of blowing it up. And now 9th overall, we have the Atlanta Hawks selecting Justin Edwards out of Kentucky. Now, Atlanta, I'm going to lose my shit if they draft another guard, okay? They have Trae Young, Sadiq Bey, DeJounte Murray, AJ Griffin, Seth Lundy, and Kobe Buffkin. The amount of scoring guards that this team has is retarded, okay? Like, they don't need another one. Atlanta, please stop picking them. And no matter how many of them you have, you're not going to win more games, okay? It doesn't even make sense. They have so many of the exact same type players on the roster, it's legitimately hurting them. And they don't have a winning record right now for a reason, because they play extremely selfish. And when you only draft other not selfish players, but when you draft other players that like to have the ball in their hand and are kind of like guys who are scorers at heart, and how they're going to make their impact in the NBA, when you have that many of them on your lineup, it makes your team a lot less effective, because you have to play as a team to win in the NBA at a high level, and that is the exact opposite of what Atlanta's been doing. So I have them selecting Justin Edwards, who is a small forward, who, although I don't think is ever going to be a star, I think he's going to be an extremely solid two-way level player who's going to continuously improve on both ends of the floor, become a high-level role player, and eventually would just be a probably starting level small forward for them, or at worst, a rotational small forward. Now, I think guys like Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, Jalen Johnson, who I loved in his class, and he's looked great before his injury, I think those guys are very, very good, and I think Justin Edwards could fit right in with this team. The problem is this team just refuses to draft winning players, and I think Justin Edwards would be a winning player in the future, and I think he would help them a ton just from being able to change their draft philosophy, and they need to do it badly, and that's why I have them picking Justin Edwards here. And now for the 10th overall pick, we have the San Antonio Spurs for the second time using the Toronto Raptors pick, selecting Rob Dillingham out of Kentucky. Now, I know I just had them picking Isaiah Collier earlier, but that doesn't really change the situation they're in, because Isaiah Collier is going to start for them basically day one, assuming they want a point guard to start for them. And then after that, they really don't have scoring off their bench. Now, you probably move Malachi Branham to the bench if you move Isaiah Collier to the starting lineup, but I still don't think Branham is enough to carry a offensive load for one bench by himself. I think he's a very solid player, but I don't think he can do that. But Rob Dillingham legitimately has like Tyrese Maxey type upside as a point guard, and I think he's an extremely confident scoring point guard that any team would love to have off your bench, a just complete spark plug type guy. And I think the San Antonio Spurs would love to have a guy like him, and they desperately need a guy like him. They kind of have Devontae Graham to do that, but I think they're somewhat tanking right now, so they're not really playing him much. But I think Devontae Graham could kind of fill that role, and I think it would be smart to play him, but they refuse to play him. But I think Rob Dillingham could fill that role for them, and he would be a very, very good player for them to do it. And I just think overall he would be one of the better scorers off of anyone's bench in a few years to come, and he would just fit this team very, very well off their bench. And with the 11th overall pick, also making their second pick of this mock draft, we had the Portland Trailblazers using the Golden State Warriors pick, and I have them selecting Aaron Bradshaw. Now, the reason I have them picking Aaron Bradshaw is because he's one of those bigs that have offensive upside. Now, although it's not fully there yet, he has the foundation for it. Like, he can shoot threes, he's shown it, and he can hit the threes when he's left open, and he can definitely build on that going forward. He also has some touch around the rim as well, and he has very good just physical attributes to go along with that. So his rebounding and defense is already going to be there from a rim protecting standpoint and a defensive rebounding standpoint. So if he can keep developing that offense as I think he can, I think he could be an extremely, extremely good backup big for them in year one, and then maybe become one of their starting big men going forward as well. And like I said, I know I just had them picking Mateus Bazis, but I think year one, like I said, although I think Mateus will probably start if they get rid of Jeremy Grant, I think he would be their backup big for a while. And if they do plan on getting rid of DeAndre Ayton, who is probably going to be the first guy to go out of all their starters, if anyone is to go, and it doesn't work out, I think Aaron Bradshaw could come in and replace him fairly solidly, very quickly if he comes in year 2, year 3. So I think overall, Bradshaw would be a very solid pick for them at 11th overall now. And I think you're banking on him developing and a ceiling hitting, and if it does hit, his two-way potential is absolutely through the roof. And now 12th overall, we have the Phoenix Suns selecting Grant Nelson. Now the Suns are in a fairly unique situation because the Suns have a contending mindset. You have guys like Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Yusuf Nurkic. Like, you have a lot of very solid role players and superstar level players on this team because you're trying to contend. And I think if you can snag a guy like Grant Nelson here, that would be absolutely huge for you. Now, chances are you're not going to be picking here at the end of the year, let's be honest. But if you are, and you can get a guy like Grant Nelson, well, that would be huge because Grant Nelson is an ultra athletic big with huge offensive upside. So his athleticism is already there, but as a power forward, he legitimately can shoot from everywhere. He can dribble. He's very fast with the ball in his hand. He's very smart with the ball in his hand. And he just overall is a 3-level potential scoring guy as a 6'11", 6'10" big with elite athleticism. And then his defense as well, because of his agility and athleticism, he can legitimately guard the probably 2 through 5 positions very solidly as well in the NBA. And I think that is huge for any big to be able to do. He's very versatile on both ends of the ball and legitimately could maybe be an all-star level player if his potential fully hits one day. And now with the 13th pick, we have the Houston Rockets using the Brooklyn Nets pick to select Zack Edey. Now, this pick may be pretty controversial to a lot of people as well, and I'm a lot higher on Edey than a lot of other people are as well. But Zack Edey, in my opinion, is one of those guys that kind of goes against the grain for what you expect in a modern-day big, but he does it enough to in such an extreme point to where I think it could very much work. And if you look at it, the Houston Rockets already have freak athletes like Amen Thompson on their roster, Cam Whitmore, Jalen Green. They have players like that who are just Tari Eason even. They're all very good athletes who play extremely, extremely fast, but they don't really have a big that can help them slow down or help them play in the half court, and I think that's exactly what they're going to do. Now, like I said, Sengun is not one of those crazy athletes, and he is a fairly slow player, and to have a guy like Edey who can kind of resemble the same play, now obviously he can't shoot or pass like Sengun, but he can be more dominant in the paint. He can bring that strength that Sengun lacks. He can bring the rebounding that Sengun lacks, the rim protecting, and things like that. He can really bring that edge to the big man that they're very sorely missing right now, and I think he would be a great fit for them. And although his floor is very high in my opinion, I don't think his ceiling is that high, but I do think his floor is very high for a rookie coming in and would legitimately be an impact player from day one as a backup big for them. And with how big he is, he's so dominant, I could see him being a double-double machine while averaging 2 or 3 blocks a game as well. Like, he could probably be a 12-point, 15 rebound, 3 blocks a game guy in his prime one day, and that is extremely valuable for anyone. And like I said, Sengun just isn't big enough, isn't strong enough, and doesn't play physical enough to get the rebounding and the block shots and the kind of intimidation in the paint that a contending level team needs, and that is exactly what a guy like Eddie would be able to bring. And now you'd have kind of a yin and yang thing going with your bigs, which is extremely valuable, adding versatility to your team. And with the final pick in this lottery, we have the New Orleans Pelicans selecting Hunter Dickinson. Now, Hunter Dickinson is one of my favorite bigs in this class, and that's the only hole the Pelicans really have depth-wise. They're probably one of the deepest teams in the NBA, and if you look at it, their backup big is Cody Zeller right now, and although he's actually been pretty okay this season, I think Hunter Dickinson, to have a guy for the future, is extremely solid, and he also plays a lot like Giannis, so it kind of help like keep the chemistry and the continuity of how they play even when Giannis is in there. It will kind of keep that going, because Hunter Dickinson is very capable of shooting a 3 if he's left wide open. He's very strong. He plays very hard. He's a very hard-nosed guy, just like Giannis. Now, he's not as big as Giannis, because I mean, he's a freshman, not a freshman, but he's a college player, so obviously he's not as big, but he's just not built the same. He's kind of slimmer, but he's a very hard-nosed, strong guy, gets boards, can hook shots, can kind of shoot, and I think he's going to develop that offensive game as it goes on. He's going to get stronger and bigger, obviously, as he gets older, and I just think he would be a perfect backup big for the New Orleans Pelicans and would fill pretty much their only hole they have left on this roster when it comes from a depth standpoint. But unfortunately, guys, that's the move for this video. So comment below, do you agree with me? Do you think that this mock draft makes sense? Who do you think I missed on? What do you think I did wrong? Do you think I'm stupid? Do you think I'm smart? Or any thoughts in the comment section below? If you like, point the like button, subscribe button, and the absolute word to me, and hope you have a blessed day, because I had a blessed day, so you need to have a blessed day. All glory to God. See you in the next video. Goodbye. Boo. Blah, blah.